of Ohio. Now, how would they do that exactly? Well, currently it is illegal right now for anyone that is under the age of 18 to view or possess pornographic materials. The only way that it blocks them from doing so on websites or areas like that is basically by a yes or no question if you are 18 or not. What the bill is proposing and what it would like to do is to essentially make an age verification system. So it'd be a third-party system that would check to make sure that you are the age that you say you are. Now, this obviously comes with many different complications over safety as far as data sharing and things like that. However, according to the Senate and the senators that proposed it, who you'll hear from in just a second, they think that this will be able to help protect minors, and very much so, something that they say is needed. I'm going to take you right now. This is a press conference held yesterday on the subject.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this morning as we discuss a bill that we plan to introduce later today. This is a bipartisan effort to address a situation that is going on with Ohio's youth. We are introducing a bill that will hopefully prevent Ohio's children from being exposed to pornographic material by requiring an age verification to enter the websites that distribute or publish material of up to a third of their content is in that space. So while this will require the age verification, there will be an independent third-party service that will prohibit that they will enter their ID into, that will allow them adults to access this material if they so desire. We have seen, I have a couple of stats that I just wanted to share briefly before I introduce our other honored guests here. But 73% of teens respondents aged 13 to 17 have watched pornography online. Over 54% first encountered pornography by the age of 13. And 15% say they saw online pornography at age 10 or younger. I'll just let that sink in for a minute. That's a fourth or a fifth grader. Of this, 44% was intentional, and 58% had encountered pornography accidentally. And 50% of teens reported feeling guilty after watching pornography. We will not be alone. Many other states have passed similar legislation with bipartisan support. I won't go through them all, but if you have questions later, we can take those. I look forward to working on this legislation to help protect Ohio's children. I'm very grateful for Senator Demora and his joint sponsorship, and I will turn this press conference over to him now to say a few words before we hear from the Lieutenant Governor and also from the Olentangy Schools teacher, Phil Callahan. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kunze. I'll be brief because this bill is simple. It's making sure that these huge international companies are being kept accountable. Adult content is adult content, and if these companies want to continue hosting them, it's a responsibility to take care that minors don't get to see it. It's already law that minors can't access adult content, but these companies are doing the bare minimum to ensure that. This bill will go farther, and as Senator Kunze said, a third-party verification system. These companies are multinational billion-dollar companies. They can afford the security to pay for these things to keep pornography away from minors. As you know, right now, minors are given this accent because of the access to this content. The commodification and objectification of women is rampant among young people. It provides unhealthy relationship standards. It also distorts the perceptions of intimacy. The problem has many causes. Hopefully, this will solve one of those causes by keeping the pornography out of the viewing of our minors. And with that, I want to introduce Lieutenant Governor Husted.
Good morning. Senator Kunze and Senator Demora, thank you for offering this legislation. It is part of a continuing fight to protect our kids from what's going on in the digital world. This is bipartisan legislation. It is legislation that is passed on a bipartisan basis across the country, and in most cases it passes nearly unanimously. If you've said recently that the world is messed up, which I've heard many people say, what's happening in our digital world, especially to our kids, is one of the reasons why. Kids are suffering, and we need to help them. They are. They're literally suffering from what's going on in the digital world, and we need to help them. Since the origin of the smartphone just over a decade ago, our teenagers, our kids, have been inundated with adult content and algorithms that they're not prepared to handle. And in many cases, their parents are not in a position to protect them from it because they don't understand the technology. During this period, we have seen childhood increases in depression, suicide, self-harm, bullying, exposure to adult content, eating disorders, academic decline, and more. This is really what's happening to our kids. Recently, the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, issued a warning that he described as, quote, an urgent public health issue. In this 19-page report, he describes, quote, extreme, inappropriate, and harmful content that is easily accessible to children and adolescents, and how social media perpetuates body dissatisfaction, disordered eating behavior, social comparisons, low self-esteem, and how that roughly 2/3 of adolescents are regularly exposed to hate-based content. This is from the Surgeon General report. In Ohio, we've been trying to deal with this through the Social Media Parental Consent Act, legislation that the General Assembly passed, that the governor signed, that simply was requiring parents to sign off before their children under the age of 16 got on social media or gaming platforms. While that was bipartisan, it was supported broadly, it's been passed in other states, it has not gone into effect due to litigation. Today's announcement is another attempt, I should say. Today's announcement is another attempt to get at protecting kids. This is not an infringement upon freedoms, nor is it government overreach. It is simply applying the same rules we have for the physical world to the digital world. I want to emphasize that. This is applying the same rules for the digital world that we already have in the physical world. It is illegal in the physical world to market and sell adult products to kids and teenagers when you must be 18 or 21 to purchase or advertise or target those young people. This is true for cigarettes, nicotine, alcohol, or pornography. It's true in the physical world. You can't do this to kids in the physical world, but in the online world, it's happening. In our online world, influencers can market these products to kids and offer a digital path to buy and sell these products. Literally, what is illegal in the physical world is a multi-billion-dollar industry selling adult products to kids online in our world, and it's ravaging them. And I will share with you, for the parents and others, what is in your digital feed is not what's in your children's digital feed. The influencers, the companies, the marketing is targeting them differently to things that they're not prepared for. And adult content and pornography is one of them. The examples of this are lives we've lost. 13-year-old Jacob Stevens, who died from TikTok Benadryl challenge. James Woods died from suicide due to a sextortion case in Streetsboro, Ohio. We know of circumstances where young men have committed suicide due to addictions to porn. We recently had a case where a man kidnapped a girl from Ohio that he had met on a gaming platform. And tragic stories that many families are either so traumatized or embarrassed to tell are out there. They don't even want to talk about it. Passing this legislation won't solve all these ills, but it will help in the broader fight to protect our children from the digital hellhole that has entrapped many of them. Now, it is my privilege to introduce someone who has a lived experience with this. Phil Callahan right now is a math teacher in the Olentangy schools, but he has 40 years of experience in education at DeSales High School, Dublin-Scioto High School, Olentangy schools, but he's worked on confronting these issues because he's had so many pleas from parents for help. And he has founded cybersafely.ai as a tool to help fight back. And I want Phil to just come and tell you the stories that he's experienced and how he's seen the many, many challenges that have changed over the last 40 years and the jeopardy that our kids are in because we're just not doing enough to protect them from what is happening in their digital lives. Phil?
Hi, very glad to be here. As like Lieutenant Governor Eustis said, this is my 40th year in education. In the mid-1980s, just very quickly, I was made a head baseball coach and selfishly thought I could win more games if I could get my kids to make good choices in regard to drugs and alcohol. What I found out was that I was going to learn more information and completely alter the course of my professional career. I learned the physiological effects of what happens on underage use, and so that has carried on to working with at-risk kids at Dublin-Scioto and then into the Olentangy district. And a couple years ago, I was recruited by cybersafely.ai, and they had heard about the drug alcohol program that we started at DeSales High School that was based on no punishing a social ill, but instead educate, assess, and treat. And I had no interest at my age in technology, but I did see it as a path to bring parents and schools back together in the betterment of our youth. I've told them a few stories, but I can tell you that in my 40 years, never have I seen our youth in such trouble as they are in this day and age, between the depression and the use of the phone. And if you put it all together, you know, as parents that now have two that have gotten through college and one who's a senior in high school, we put the cell phone in their hand in middle school in the 6th grade, and we have no understandings of exactly what the algorithms and what they are seeing. So I have encountered kids who have been sexploited and therefore had self-harm. I have encountered kids who in 6th grade have become addicted to porn, and you can't tell your mom at that age, you can't tell your dad at that age, just who do you talk to? And so I'm just so excited to hear where this may be moving to the place to where we just have to come together and keep our youth safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess with that, we'll take any questions.
So the Social Media Verification Act is held up in court right now. Why is the implementation of this bill going to be different? How is it different to ask this company versus the social media companies to have kids verify their age without facing the same legal battles?
Well, I don't know if Lieutenant Governor wants to maybe take that one just from the standpoint of he knows more about the legal battles of.
Because there's a clear delineation in law that you must be 18 or 21 to buy a certain product. In this particular case, we're applying the same rules to the digital world that we do to the physical world. And in the legislation, which has been worked through in other states, they have put a process in place, which this legislation is modeled after, to make sure that it is easy to implement, the rules are clear, and it's fair. So the complaint that you get, what we had on social media, the social media bill, that it wasn't clear, it wasn't easy to implement. This is very clear, very easy to implement, has been upheld in other places. And typically, the companies that have to accommodate this have just stopped doing business in those states. We'll be just fine with that if that happens here in Ohio. But I want to emphasize on the social media component. We asked those companies. We gave them a seat at the table. We said, help us design this in a way that you can implement it. They sat in the room, and then they, after giving them that opportunity to help us write a law that they could comply with, they sued anyway. They're not to be trusted. But in this particular case, this law has been tested It is simply saying in the digital world, you must do the same things that you do in the physical world, and if you don't, then you're subject to the penalties under the law.
This bill, it states that if somebody violates this, all powers and remedies are available to the Attorney General to enforce it. What does that mean? Are there misdemeanors, felonies?
I have this somewhere. It's actually section 1345.02 of the ORC, and I don't actually have that literally listed out here, but we can get that back. We can look up that code and get it to you, unless you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's the same thing that if you would do this in the physical world, the same consequences apply to you in the online world. And that's the rule of thumb. So whatever it is that you're not allowed to do for kids in the physical world, it's just applying here, and those penalties are equivalent.
Generally, could you talk to the challenges of legislating online spaces and even popular platforms like Twitter or X allow pornographic content on them?
So it would have to be a third of the content, and it would have to be that would be their business. So Twitter or X is not their business platform, so it wouldn't constitute.
Yeah. What's happening to kids is that you have, it's not like they run ads and put it in your child's feed. What they do is they do it through influencers and people who just film their own videos. They send them out there. They may post them on these platforms, and then it leads you to the adult content. Then you can just click the link, lead you to the adult content space, and then simply, hey, are you 18? And they just check a box, and that's how, even if you're not, that's how they've been going around the law. Now, this legislation, once it's passed and signed into law, will create penalties for failure to do the age verification component of that, where you're basically trying to sell porn to kids. And this will stop it.
You mentioned that other states have this law already in effect. Which states are they?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a list. I'll just read it to you so we have it for sure. We have Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Montana, Virginia, and North Carolina have all passed it.
Yeah, I think it started in Louisiana, and then many other states are doing this. It's been bipartisan. It's been upheld, and it is helping. As I emphasized in my remarks, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it's going to help, because kids are getting inundated with this stuff, and they're not developmentally prepared to handle it. And in the physical world, you can see it. Moms and dads have an easier view into what's happening in their children's lives. The public can see it. But in the digital world, nobody knows. And then you have 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds getting addicted to this stuff, screwing up their minds, and there's no place to turn for help, because they don't know, because they're not prepared to deal with it. And literally, they've been winking and nod, like everybody says we're going to check these boxes. And you know what we found out? People might not do that. They might lie about their age. And we've done nothing in our society to implement it, done nothing to help them. Things that in this country we have said for generations are illegal in the physical world, we just wink and a nod, let it go on in the digital world, and nobody stands up. We are standing up. We did it with the Social Media Parental Notification Act. We're doing it with this. Because after a decade of failing our kids in a digital world, it's time that we start making a better effort to protect them. And Phil, I know he didn't tell you half of what he could tell you. He said to us before, I don't remember if you said it in your remarks, but he's never seen it this bad in 40 years. And it's all attributable to what's happening in the digital lives of our kids. They're not prepared to handle. And by the way, I know all of you in the audience who are here, you know a lot of adults who are not capable of handling it too. But in the world, once you're an adult, you get to make choices that you're free to choose. Kids, we know, the evidence is there. Their brains are not developed. They do not have any context for the things that they're consuming at a very young age. And it's distorting their view of themselves and reality. It's harming them. Not just my opinion. It's practitioners who work with these kids every day. It's the Surgeon General of the United States of America. And Senator Coonsey and Senator DeMora are stepping forward to try to help protect some kids in Ohio, that we do a better job with this.
Looking at this bill, there's another version that's in the House right now. It goes a bit further, it seems, with criminalizing and making a juvenile have a misdemeanor if they lie about their age. Is that something that would be added to this one throughout the process?
That's not my intention now.
Yeah, I was going to say, why would we penalize the kids? I mean, again, as the Lieutenant Governor said several times, the kids' brains aren't processing this. They don't really know that they're doing anything wrong. Why would we penalize juveniles for looking at this stuff when the companies are just keep pumping out at them? So it's not Senator Coonsey's intent not to penalize children, but to penalize these multi-billion dollar multinational companies from targeting these kids.
Not exactly. But are you working with the House and developing this?
I guess for the adults who have already started, raising concerns about, yes, like third-party verification, but what if those get hacked? Some are calling this Orwellian. What is your response?
I think if you go into as the Lieutenant Governor has pointed out, if you go into the physical world and you purchase this material, someone's looking at your ID. I don't see how it's really any different than putting in that into the social media platform.
If you're not making money off these kids, it doesn't matter. You can say anything you want. No one is forcing them into this. But if you are not interested in selling porn to kids and monetizing it, then you shouldn't have a problem with this. That's not very Orwellian. That's protecting kids from things we know harm them. That's called responsible citizenry. That's called being a parent. It's called protecting the most vulnerable. That's what it's called.
So a couple of things they did not hit on during that press conference. Did not talk about the specifics surrounding what penalties that actually would be, which I think is a really big part of this, right? If you are going to say that there's some sort of a penalty done, they need to be able to explain it. Now, I'm going to read through that entire bill that's been proposed, but as of right now, I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like. In addition to that, the security and safety that goes along with the individuals that are going to be willing to give up their identification to enter those websites, how can they ensure that that third-party company will not keep and maintain their information and be liable for some sort of a data leak? You heard the response to that from the legislators, which essentially was, if you're willing to hand your ID over for somebody to buy this in person, why would you not be willing to do it over the internet? It's not an apples to apples thing. That's not a one-to-one comparison. You're handing your ID over to somebody in person, typically that is scanned or just read off. That's not kept in a database that potentially could be breached and reveal that information to somebody else. You'd understand the confusion around that. So, of course, we will continue to follow this as this heads toward legislation. We're going to let you go now because we do have 19 News at 7 o'clock kicking off over on the CW in about 3 minutes. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Have a great day and great night. Much more to come both on air and online. We have our weather show as well, starting at 7:30.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.